Hello, everyone. My name is Tyler Hinton. I'm our Director of Product Marketing at Convoso, and I am joined by Ryan Thurman. He's the Director of Sales and Marketing at Contact Center Compliance, the organization that runs DNC.com, of course. And we're super excited to announce our new integration with DNC.com. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So thank you for joining me, Ryan.
Hey Tyler, glad to be on here today and talk about some exciting new developments with Convoso and everything going on in the compliance world.
Yes, I'm very excited to talk about that. And as you know, we're really committed to helping our customers comply with all sorts of different regulations that apply to them, you know, the ones that you'd expect, TCPA, but also the ones that are coming and that are constantly evolving. We've been talking quite a bit about the new law down in Florida over the last few months, and that's one of the things that we're constantly doing here at Convoso, is making sure that our customers have the tools to not only comply with these laws, but to do so efficiently, right? And making sure that you're not having to make a sacrifice between compliance and efficiency. And that's one of the things that we are really working on with DNC.com with this integration. And so we're really excited to announce this. Our customers are able to do this immediately. This is already available within their systems. So now we have a direct API link to DNC.com, which is fantastic. It's going to allow our customers to go and scrub their lists against federal and state do not call lists, and also for known litigators. And we're going to talk about how important it is to scrub your lists for known litigators here in the coming few minutes. But this is really going to help our customers to make sure that they're complying with the TCPA and making sure that all of their lists are thoroughly scrubbed against these do not call lists, and also saving quite a bit of time for those dialing administrators and really automating that process. So
yeah, this has been something that a lot of our customers have been both on the contact center compliance DNC.com side have been after for a while, and also from customers that they're out there looking for a system that has that compatibility so that they can be more efficient with their dialing and not have to kind of manually track these regulations, not only from the DNC side, but also from these known litigators. So we've got some good information that we'll share with folks today.
absolutely. Well, let's just start off with some of the consequences that we've seen for contact centers and organizations that haven't heeded this warning, right? And maybe they've run into a TCPA violation or violated one of these state laws. What happens when that occurs? What are some of the consequences that you've seen out there?
So, I mean, the average cost of a TCPA, kind of what I would consider a shakedown, their typical strategies are going to come at you for, somewhere in the $10,000–$20,000 range if it's just kind of a newbie. But most of the more savvy litigants, you're talking about a couple $100,000 minimum before they'll walk away. Most of the class actions that end up in court, if you look at cases where companies have successfully or where litigators have successfully gone after a company, it can be several $1,000,000, where that's just a direct payment to the litigator. TCPA fines that rack up those damages, it's $500 to $1,500 per call, or per text, so it applies to both calling and texting. And then you've got on top of that the do not call fines, which now are about $43,000–$44,000 per call. And what's happened in the private litigation world is because of the Facebook case, more and more litigation is trending towards a do not call angle, because it is harder to make the argument that a company was using an automated calling system, because there's been a little bit more narrowing of the definition of a dialer. So now you're seeing these what used to be strictly kind of TCPA cases where they're throwing in do not call complaints in there, and they're using those that fine basis of $1,500 or $43,000 per call to drive up the cost of the proposed settlement. So it can be pretty costly. And then you have the other trend, which is the state enforcement, which with Florida's new rule, you've got um, litigation coming out left and right on that, because that has both a private right of action, but also attorney's fees associated with it, where um, got some huge liability down there that we can talk about a little bit later.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that I would say for our customers, or really for any contact center out there, we spend so much time trying to improve our contact rates, lower our cost per acquisition, and testing, A/B testing different lead sources, trying to gain more revenue and operate more efficiently. It's critical to keep your eye on the ball with some of these compliance issues, because all of that hard work that you're doing can just be wiped out, right, by some of these lawsuits. And so I guess my next question for you, Ryan, is what are some of the common mistakes that are leading to these violations, whether that's at the federal level, the state level?
Well, probably the most common mistake is people don't do either a third-party review of their dialing system or their strategy. They kind of think they know everything about compliance, so they don't really evaluate where their gaps are. And so that leads to problems, especially if you assume that your dialer manager is actually scrubbing your leads and doing things correctly, or you assume that you have consent on leads and your consent doesn't stand up against TCPA or down in Florida. So that's really where an integration helps, where you don't have to have that human element involved, and that really tends to be the issue when you look at a lot of these cases where it was human error, or somebody thought they were doing something correctly, or they thought they had consent but they didn't review it, or they figure that they had consent, they didn't need to scrub DNC, or they're getting consent and they aren't really worried about compliance, or they're in some vertical like nonprofit where you still got litigators that'll come in and um, they'll act like a lead. They'll even sign up for services. There's all kinds of little playbooks they've got. And so, um, having that ability where your dialer, your contact center, or your system of record is synced with your compliance system can really buffer some of those issues where you have disconnect between the scrubbing, whether it be not having a way to scrub litigators, or just simply not having a way to refresh the data. That's what a lot of these litigators will also prey on, is the porting of lists and changes in phone numbers, where if you have that kind of synced at your system of record, it can not only create a good defense mechanism, but it can prevent some of these new records sneaking in and causing problems.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And one of the things that you mentioned that stuck with me too is just human error, right? You can, even if you think that you're doing everything correctly, even if you are, just eliminating that risk of human error by automating this process can really go a long way.
Yeah, I mean, when you go through and we do some historical audits for companies after they've had compliance issues, and a lot of times that's the issue, is they maybe scrubbed the list initially before it got lit up as a campaign. They left the records in the dialer beyond the TCPA safe harbor, which is 15 days, or beyond the federal DNC, and you got new additions on DNC or changes to the porting of phone numbers that weren't accounted for, and they kept dialing the records. Or just having that kind of like watchdog on the back end and running these scrubs real time. It's really helpful from not only reducing the risk mitigation, but also from the standpoint of, like, if you've got to go fight any TCPA or DNC kind of investigations, it's helpful to have that process that you can point to, that it ran real time, that you went above and beyond the statutory requirements, that you had real time scrubs, and you weren't even using the grace period. Because that's usually the common symptom, is you leave records on there, you don't recheck them, and it just helps also, just because if especially if you get new litigators that are popping up, you want to account for those, because they do go get new phone numbers on a regular basis. They know that there's anti-litigator strategies out there, so they're always trying to spin up new numbers and get companies to call them or text them. I mean, that's the common ploy is you get a company that's doing like solar sales, for example. Somebody comes onto their website, hey, I'm interested in get a quote for my house, and you call them up, and all of a sudden, they want you to call another number, text them another number, and then 2 weeks later, you get a demand letter for $20,000. And you're like, wait a sec, these people opted in, and maybe they filled out your consent or not, but just fighting these cases can be expensive. And with some of the stuff coming down with the Trace Act and some of the other proposed criminal penalties that's in Congress right now, or in the some of the bills that are out there, um, it's not going to get any easier. But a lot of people are looking for ways to automate their calls because the Facebook case kind of freed up some amount of dialing. But in order to make sure that you're not running afoul of these things, it's helpful to have a sync with a third party compliance provider. Kind of the old days of trying to do it yourself, it's pretty dangerous, and it's a lot less expensive than people think as far as being able to have a system in place and not having to have that build out where you have to go out of your way and build a framework around an API and involve your tech team who's probably super busy. It makes it a lot easier to just go sync that up. It's a lot easier to just have something that's plug and play, and also something that's customizable because everybody's got different types of campaigns, leads they call. So the level of compliance is going to differ between a company that's doing cold calling or somebody who's doing callbacks or doing lead gen or getting consent, or maybe another entity that's a nonprofit or they've got some exemptions. So having the ability to kind of customize it based on your business rules is important because it's not always a one size fit all solution. You're going to have some people who are, they've got consent, they've got everything buttoned up, and they may just need to scrub on litigators. Do not call might not be an issue, but a lot more companies are doing um, telemarketing now because they're trying to drum up business, or they've got an offshore company does lead gen for them. So having all that synced so that your lead generators, not just going to tell you that they're doing scrubbing, that you can actually see it and have it linked up with your kind of system of record is helpful.
Yeah, and I think to your point, it's extremely important to always be on the lookout for the known litigators and make sure that you're, scrubbing your list for them, of course. But how much does it help, right? Let's say that you still get a lawsuit, right? How much does it help when you can point to the fact that you have a process in place, such as this integration with DNC.com? But if you were to go into a situation where you have to go to court and defend yourself, how much does it help when you can say, look, we have this process where we're constantly scrubbing for records, we're doing this in a responsible way to make sure that we're adhering to the law and going above and beyond to do so.
And that's usually the way in which an attorney will defend a case is they'll try to posture that their client had achieved or met the safe harbor requirements, which is really having the policies, procedures, following the protocols, the minimum unscrubbing times. So having being able to document that and knowing that information actually can trace back to information that you can um, provide as due diligence. A lot of companies think, I can do all this myself, but then at the end of the day, you have to track the history because that's really what you're paying for when it comes to having a third-party compliance provider, is having that background to prove that you actually ran the scrubs. And like a lot of the complaints may not even be valid. You get a lot of people that'll claim, oh, I'm on the do not call list. Why are you calling me? And being able to um, trace that back to the actual date, when those numbers actually got on the DNC is helpful, but also having, um, the ability to kind of show that you were, putting forth best efforts, because the DNC rules do have a safe harbor for kind of that, it was a mistake. Let's say our dialer didn't sync with the DNC database or whatever. TCPA safe harbor is a little bit more elusive, but they do still have a safe harbor if you follow the rules for scrubbing cell phones and falling in within the 15-day rules. But it's usually the way in which either attorneys will look for is, like, did you have consent? Can you prove it? And did you have scrubbing in place? Did you do your registrations at the federal level, the state level? Did you have your state telemarketing licenses? Did you check the boxes of a company trying to put forth a good faith effort? Or were you trying to skirt the rules and you didn't have your registrations in place? So, you don't want to take some of these things lightly, because when it comes to having to defend some of these things, if you've not registered in some of the states, which can be a little expensive. I mean, it can definitely haunt you when you have to go fight these cases. But I've had clients that they've had compliance issues because they did something rogue, and a state it's come after them, and then they've responded and documented that they've got scrubbing in place, and the states have told them that's great. We're glad you take this seriously. We'll let you know if you have any other problems, and it disappears. The problem with the private litigation is, they're trying to drive you into a settlement by kind of bleeding you out of lawyers' fees and dragging things on. So that's kind of the idea of trying to avoid these serial litigators. And there's a lot more of them out there now, post-COVID, or COVID phase 4, whatever we're in, because a lot of people are out of work. They found a way to make a side hustle into a full-time hustle. There's guides on it of how to sue marketers online. There's Facebook groups for these folks. They share information, and it's kind of a two-sided coin. You've got the attorneys that are out there who drive a lot of this, but then you have a lot of consumers, and they have just, they're professional plaintiffs, and they sue not just for TCPA, but other related things like Fair Credit Reporting, Fair Debt Collection Protection Act. But now they've started to morph into more do not call issues because of the Florida rule, and because of the kind of narrowing of the definition of what a dialer is. Before the Facebook case, it was a lot easier to claim a company was using a dialer, that it was an automated system. Now companies have a little bit better argument, and that's the other part that can help if you have to defend a case. Is you had consent, you weren't using a dialer, so it wasn't subject to TCPA, but any kind of technology argument is expensive. So it's better off to have proof that you had either consent or you met that safe harbor, because then also at the end of the day, a lot of these litigators are not looking for they're looking for companies that are going to kind of push over a little bit more. So if you've got a pretty good cover story and a good attorney that can get them to back off, you want to nip that in the bud sooner than later.
All right, I think that makes sense. And, I think it's just when you're thinking about your business planning and your strategies for outreach in general, the place that you need to start is compliance, right? Because everything you do on top of that, like I said before, it can be wiped away if you're not paying attention to these compliance issues. And that's why at Convoso, we're so excited about this integration, is because this is going to just really help our customers take that step to go above and beyond, automate the process of making sure that your lists are scrubbed regularly and you're doing the best that you can to make sure that you're adhering to these laws in a way that you can demonstrate easily, right? So we're super excited about it. Convoso, quick recap again, we're really dedicated on helping our customers comply with laws that are constantly evolving, and it's moving at a pace that it's hard to keep up with sometimes, especially with, as a contact center manager, when you want to focus on the things that drive your business. And that's why it's so important to have a dialer like Convoso that's going to help you adhere to those evolving laws, but also work with a third party like you have with DNC.com and contact center compliance to make sure that you're actually taking the steps that you need to take on an ongoing basis to make sure that you're in adherence in a way that you can demonstrate easily. So I think that is going to wrap it up here for this quick video. Ryan, any closing thoughts for us as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot on a contact center's plate if they're going to be doing any kind of outreach via voice or SMS. You got the federal rules, the state rules, you got calling time restrictions, state holidays. it's a lot to juggle if you try to do it yourself. And having a partner as a third party, and one especially that's integrated into your dialing system and into your strategy, it just really makes things a lot more efficient, and allows you to kind of have that system of record or your point of failure not not be exposed, especially the way you guys have designed it with the real-time scrubbing. Because that's really, when we talk to customers, that's really what they're after. They want something that's real time. They want the APIs pre-integrated. They don't want to build anything out, but they want the coverage that covers their unique situation based on their compliance needs, and one that they can implement rather quickly. The companies that are out there looking for systems, they want things that work today and not 2 years from now. So we're excited about the integration, because like I said, we've got a lot of mutual customers and a lot of folks out there that they're trying to centralize their systems, and you guys have a good track record and kind of a cool multi-channel kind of platform that people are looking for. So I think it'll definitely help customers out, and we can definitely help out with customers that are kind of on the fence and they're really unsure um, you know how much they may be exposed to litigators, or how the impact of DNC might hit certain campaigns, especially if they're in like business to business or other areas. So we can run some testing for customers to help them get an idea of like their data loss, or how many litigators they might have on the sample list, and or work with a Convoso customer that maybe wants to put this like in a sandbox environment first, kind of try it before you buy it. We can definitely spin up some sandbox type accounts so they can kind of build everything out and get it set they want, so when they go live it's painless and they have a successful experience. So definitely had a good run building this up, and like I said, I think the real-time part is really the thing that kind of sets you guys apart. There's not a lot of dialing platforms that will do that real-time connection to a third party. A lot of folks, they want to do things in batch, but data changes sometimes more often than even within the day. So having the ability to have that real time and not have those delays or those gaps in compliance that cause issues, I think is incredibly important. And I mean, we talked about the fines and the litigation, and I mean, it's a real deal. I mean, this is these are put your lights out statutes, as some of the attorneys I've talked about before. I mean, if you're a small company and you got a settlement for $2 or $4 million, and your company is 20 people, and you finally gotten out of the COVID times, and you're finally starting to get things back on track, it can kind of set you back. And these litigators hunt companies. That's what they do. They look for logos. They look for small companies. There's no rhyme or reason. But having a good partnership with you guys, I think it's going to be exciting.
I think so too. I think it's a no-brainer, really. I mean, build up a stronger legal defense for your organization, prevent yourself from getting these fines, or getting into these legal battles where you may have to settle. Also save yourself time, save your dialing administrators time. It's a really great integration. And so, my closing thought too, for our existing customers at Convoso, again, this is available today. This is already out and ready to go. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to your CSM. And if you're not a Convoso customer and you're interested in learning more about Convoso, as well as our DNC.com integration, there's a link there that you can go to at tryconvoso.com. And we will be happy to set up a demo or get you the information that you need. And I know that Ryan and his team will be more than happy to help out with that as well. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Ryan. Always great to talk with you. And I'm sure we'll be in touch quite a bit going forward. And again, thank you everyone for joining us.
Thanks, Tyler. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.